and welcome to How to Edit Animal Photos today. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, and I know we already have some of our regular weekly subscribers and fans already in the chat and engaged. So if you are new here, welcome. Hop into the chat and let us know where you're from. We've got the usual suspect with us, Neil, who is over in the UK, I believe, somewhere. And Marguerite, Smoky, Ontario. Sheila, I know she's down east in Canada as well. Kelly and on Calgary. We had a bit of lightning here too, Kelly, but no rain. So hopefully it holds off. Cloudy in Alaska. And that's about all for now. So we got lots of the usuals here. Welcome. Hoping that Holly joins us and a few others. There's Trish as well. Hey, 2 weeks in a row. Woo! Yay! I've got some of your images too, Trish. I recognize some of those camel pictures from India. So today we're going to be working on animal photos. And the thing with animals, especially in Luminar Neo, is that there isn't a automatic masking or an AI masking for animals. So we have to kind of do it another way. In Lightroom, there isn't an animal finder either, but you can do find object or find subject. So let's see how these animal photos that have been submitted pull through both of those software. So depending on which one you prefer your images to be edited in, that's what I'm going to be doing. All right, so I'm just going to turn that off. Actually, let's turn that off. And let me hop over here to Lightroom. Okay, so I've got lots of great images here. The one that I worked on was Marguerite. So I might start with this one because this is the one that I used for the featured image, and I thought it was really cute. So I've already done some editing on this one, and you indicated Lightroom. So I'm going to just show you the edits that I did here, and then I'll go back and sort of undo them a little bit. Okay, so the original image looked like that. Okay, so when I'm doing my editing, most of the time the goal is to make the subject jump out more and to minimize any distractions around the subject and the background. So with this one, I wanted to darken the background and brighten him because he's kind of backlit a little bit and bring some more texture out in him. So did I do that successfully? Yay, Holly's here, faithful student, David, everybody's signing in. Awesome. Manfred in Florida, welcome everybody. Okay, so did I successfully achieve, and Rob could do a poll apparently, unbeknownst to me, you guys have had polls this whole time if you're in the chat on YouTube. So did I successfully make the subject stand out here? So I'll do the before and after one more time. Okay, there's the before. And there's the after. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I did this. Now, before I undo it, I'm just going to make a virtual copy. Okay, so on my keyboard shortcut, that is Command apostrophe. Right, and if you don't already have that, you can pick up our Lightroom keyboard shortcuts, which looks like this, and you could print it out or have it on your tablet or on your computer to reference. So, Rob, if you could please share a link with the Lightroom keyboard shortcuts for those that don't have it. I think most of the people here that use Lightroom do. Hey, Brandon, we haven't seen you in a while. Good to have you. I've got some of your animal pictures as well. So, okay, going back to this one. So I made a virtual copy. So now we've got two versions. This is the copy. So I'm going to go back on, I'm going to undo this one. Okay, so I'm going to reset the virtual copy back to full size. Go full size. Rob is shouting at me from the basement. The voice from the basement. There we go. Full size. Sorry. Thank you, Rob and Holly, for reminding me to go full screen. All right. Is that better? Okay. Let me get rid of some of the presets over here. No, I'm going to leave those. Okay. So now, as usual, the first thing I do is color profile. So in this case, I think I chose landscape. Let me see if I did that. Oh, no, I chose camera standard. Okay, so in this case, I chose camera standard. Let's see why I might have done that. I can see why I did that, okay? So it added more contrast and it made him darker, which added to the problem. So I'm going to go with standard, okay? The other things that I'm looking at are, is there white and black? So I'm going to do my little shift double click on the whites and the blacks, and immediately that punches up the contrast and it spread out the histogram so we have a nice range, okay? I'm just going to edit this and let's see how close I get to the one that I did before. Okay. So two things I want to do. I want to increase the texture on the little chipmunk, but not on the background. Okay. So I don't want to use the overall sliders, because if I do overall clarity and texture, you see what happens is it also applies to the grass. And I don't want that, because the out of focus grass, when you add texture, it just starts to look a little bit weird. So if anything, I would just do a little bit of texture overall or clarity, but I think I'm literally going to leave it neutral, okay? If anything, I could actually go minus texture, which applies everywhere, okay? And tiny bit of minus clarity. Now I'm going to make note, okay? So I'm going to go minus 20, and let's just say minus 50 on the texture, okay? So when I do this, okay, keep in mind that these are global edits these sliders are doing. So they're softening the overall image, right? If I zoom in a little bit, you can see the before. Oops, I need to set my before. Okay, so if you've done like what I've done here, and I've done a virtual copy, and I want my before, my history set to before, so that when I do the before and after with the backslash key, okay, I just have to choose this step in the history. So right click on reset settings, copy history to before. Okay, so now when I do before, that's the original image. Okay. Let me get back here. Okay, so now you could see that what's happening is it's actually sort of blurring him a little bit. Okay, so I don't want to blur him. I just want to blur everything else a little bit. So keep in mind, minus 50 and minus 20. Now I'm going to do a mask. Oops, I'm still on the before. Hang on. There we go. See how he blurry? He looks sharper before. Okay. So I'm going to do select subject. Okay. Actually, I'm going to use the preset that I showed you guys how to make, I think, last week. And that one here is just to mask subject and background. So all this preset does is applies the masking to the subject and the background and renames them. That's it. There's no settings on them. So if I just want really quick, boom, I got two masks with labels on them and they're renamed, I use that preset. Okay. Now that I've got the preset, or now that I've got the mask open, what was my texture at? I was at minus 50. So I'm going to go plus 50 plus another 50, so 100, okay? So keep in mind my overall texture when I applied it globally was minus 50. To get back to 0, I would need to be at 50, okay? So minus 50 plus 50 is 0. But I'm going to get more. I'm going to add more texture, okay? So I'm going to go maybe not quite so far, maybe 85. And I was at minus 20 on the clarity, so I'm going to go at least plus 20, which will then be even or 0. And then let's go maybe 35. Okay, so whatever I was minus on the global scale, which is still down here, okay, minus 50, minus 20, adds to whatever I apply in the mask on these tools. Okay, so texture and clarity, they start to cancel each other out. Okay, I'm not going to give them quite as much clarity. Okay, now I'm going to brighten him. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit. And you can't do the little trick with the Alt Option key on the sliders when you're masking. So if you want to see if there's anything clipping, you need to use the J key. Okay, so I just press J. So as I brighten him, I can see that that highlight on his cheek is clipping. So I can either scale it back a little bit or bring the highlights down to compensate. Okay. Pick up the shadows. I'm fairly happy with that. I want to give him a little bit of black, so that's going to give him more contrast and more color, right? So let's see what this mask on just the chipmunk is doing. So that's before and that's after. Okay, so he's way more punched up. And I could also bring the exposure down and the highlights or the whites up as well. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways to brighten him. Okay, I wanted to brighten the midtones. Now we've also got the background selected. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit more so we can see the background. Actually, let's just go to a normal. Select the background mask, right? And if this is in the road, you can just move this, okay? So I can move this mask panel by grabbing it, right? And you can move it wherever you want. I could even move it to another monitor, right? Which is now off my screen for you guys, so I'm not going to do that. But if you're working with 2 monitors, you can move it off the screen, right? Now I know that I've already blurred the background somewhat because I did the minus texture and minus clarity globally, okay, and then compensated on the little chipmunk. And I'm missing his foot too, so I could go back in and pick up his foot, which I think that I did. So I'm going to darken the background. I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit, and I'm also going to bring the blacks down. So bringing the blacks down darkens it as well because it brings the whole thing, shifting that histogram of the background. Okay, I might even leave the highlights up. I believe I also adjusted the temperature a little bit. I found it was kind of green, a weird green, so gave it a little bit more magenta. Trying to make it warmer in terms of red, looking more red as opposed to it was sort of a greenish, weird green color. Okay, so I've shifted that a little bit. Let's see what the background is doing. Okay, so that's the background mask. Okay. And if I want to pick up his foot, right, if you want to see the mask, just press the O key, right, for overlay. If you want to change the overlay color, that's down here. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up his foot. So I'm going to add, and I could do brush or object. I'm going to do object and make the brush a little smaller. And I'm just going to paint over his foot and see if it finds his foot. Okay, so see how it just brightened up his foot a little bit? Looks like there's a nut or something over here, but I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now if we want to do the same on the background, we have to subtract, object, and then just paint over his foot again. Okay, so now his foot stands out. I'm missing his other foot, so let's just see if I can subtract and get his other foot over here. There we go. Okay, so that's what I've done with the masking. Okay. And I haven't really done much overall, but I'm going to check now again that I've adjusted the brightness on him. See if he's clipping, which he was. Let's brighten the overall picture. I'm always doing this double check. Okay, so I change one thing, and I go back and change the other things. I'm going to use a preset to darken the edge, and that is just a vignette down here. Okay, so there is our before and after, right? I didn't adjust the color on this one. We could play with the color a little bit. I could see if it makes anything better. Auto, yeah, it kind of took out some of the green tint to it. It looks a little yellow green. I could give him a little more magenta. Let's see how he looks. Sometimes you just want to play with the sliders up and down. He should be brown, right? I'm also not happy with the color in the background. It still seems like a weird mossy color. So I could actually use the hue sliders and the targeted adjustment tool. And I'll just pick one of these greens, and you can see where it's going to land on the scale. I could shift it a little bit. So we can go more green, or we can go more orange. And keep in mind that there is some in him, and we can't mask this tool in Lightroom. So that is the drawback, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see what that's doing. I think I like that color a little better. It looks more green. I don't know. It just has a weird tint to me. If you have weird tints in the background that you can't get rid of, sometimes you can work with the color grading tool. And again, this is not one that can be masked in. Actually, that's not true. I believe they changed this a little bit because now we can do a curve in here. So curve is something that's new in terms of masking. Okay, and curves, when we're on this background mask, we can actually shift the color if I want to give it more yellow or more blue. Okay, so I could shift more yellow into the highlights. I could give more red into the shadows. Okay, so see how you can shift these colors. And because it's on a mask, it's only affecting the background. So this is the only tool that you can use to play with the color if you want to shift the color a little bit. There isn't a mask on the HSL tool. Okay, so you can play with this guy. I still find like it's pink. I don't know. It just looks magenta to me. There we go. Let's see. Okay, turn the, if I press this to show before and after. So it just warmed up the background a little bit and shifted the color. Okay, so if you want to do a color shift on a mask, try the curves tool. If you could please share the video on the curves tool, Rob, because that one it's made for Luminar, but I think it's actually made for Luminar AI, but it shows really well how to use the curve tool, which applies anywhere. Hey, Earl, welcome. First timer, welcome. Where are you joining from, Earl? What time is it where you're at in your part of the world? We've got people from down under, we've got UK, Canada, and US. So we got people from all over. I'd love to know where you're from. Yes, I need an earpiece from the producer. We need like a little walkie-talkie system. Yes. Rob is reminding everybody to please give you the video a thumbs up. And if you are new here and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Then you will get notices when we have new things coming up. All right. Now there is, we do have a partner meeting with Skylum tomorrow. So I'm expecting some kind of announcement from them and something new to be coming out, probably a new version, maybe a new extension. Not sure yet. It's been a while since we had something new. So once that is available for me, I will be making a video for you guys as well. So let's see how close I got with this chipmunk guy to the one that I did before. I think the colors are a little bit different. Yeah, I put more color in the background this time. Right? Last time I chose to take the color out, and this time I chose to put more color in it to show you that tool. Okay, so I did the same kind of thing, just changed the background a little bit, but he looks pretty similar, right? Costa Rica, bienvenido. We've not been to Costa Rica, but we've been to your neighbor, Nicaragua, many times. Okay, so that's a nice Lightroom edit. Let's do one in Luminar. Okay, so we've got Sheila's horse. We've got Deb's moose. Actually, Deb's got a few. She's got a bear as well. Oh, did you want Luminar or Lightroom, Deb? Because I've got one labeled for each. And Earl sent an image. Now, this one actually, I started working on this one, Earl. Now that I know you're in Costa Rica, the monkeys make a lot of sense, right? So I wanted to show this one in Lightroom and in Luminar because you said you're working in Luminar. So I'm going to open that one in Luminar. But I want to show you something that's really pronounced here that is actually sometimes hard to see, okay? And it has to do with the lens used most of the time. So this one here is done with the 300 mil lens on a Canon. Okay, so the 75 to 300 Canon lens. And what I'm looking at specifically is this little fringe here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Oops. I want to zoom in, not out. In. There we go. Right, can you see that? Now it's really pronounced, right? You can see this purple fringe here. And if I move over to the other side, you can see it purple here and red here. Okay, so there's two things going on here. Okay, it's either chromatic aberration or a color fringe, because when you have something that's strongly backlit, especially if you darken the highlights, we'll see that even more pronounced. Okay, can you see that? The purple gets more pronounced. I'm going to drag the highlights down a little bit for the moment here. And to fix this in Lightroom, again, I'm going to show you both ways. Okay, you need to go to Lens Corrections and simply check off this box here called Chromatic Aberration. You know, you'll notice that it did an okay job, but it's not completely gone, right? Let's check over here. Okay, so again, it did an okay job, but it's not gone. So the rest of what's there is then the color fringe. So to handle that one, you need to go into manual, and now you'll see this defringe tool. Okay, you could drag the slider up, okay, and see if that solves the problem. Okay, looks like it did. Okay, so I can drag this purple slider up, and you can see that that did a pretty good job there. Let's check over here. Okay, also did a pretty good job on the purple. Okay, but what's happening here? It's got this red tinge here. So the purple is handled. Okay, you see that? If I do a before and after, so the purple is handled, but the red is still there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this targeted adjustment tool. Okay, and I'm going to attempt to click on the edge here where the red is. Okay, now do you see what happened? It popped in some colors and levels over here, and it's done a pretty good job of getting rid of most of that red. Okay, so that's how you use the defringe tool in Lightroom. Let's see how it's doing over here. Okay, now did that make a bigger mess with this one? I'm going to slide this one down. Sometimes you need to kind of do a balance between the two. Okay, oops. So for the most part, I think that looks pretty good. You see the difference? So if I do before, you can really see the purple fringe. You can even see the red one here, and then after. Okay. I'm going to take this one directly to Luminar, and I'm going to go, I'm not going to go edit in, I'm going to go export. So I want the raw file. So I'm going to open the source file. Oops, I chose Luminar AI. That's my bad. I have too many versions of Luminar installed. Let's try that again. I'm going to export. Let's find Luminar Neo this time. There we go. Okay. In regards to Marguerite's Little Chipmunk, yes, you can raise the texture and clarity fairly high, especially when it's on a subject like that that has a lot of texture, like fur, right? So that's what we're dealing with today with animals, is they have a lot of texture in their fur, and the noise is kind of just going to disappear. I can go back to the chipmunk if you want to see him close up, and we can take a look at that. Okay. Let's see. There's my Luminar. I think it's opened on my other. Oh. And it's telling me I've got an update, which I'm not going to install right now. Okay, so here's my Luminar Neo, and you can see the same problem. Okay, if we go into Edit, where you're going to find it in Luminar is under the Develop Raw tool. Okay, so that's why I didn't export the file, or I didn't take the file as edit in from Lightroom into here, is because you won't get this tool. Okay. So you need to go down here to optics, and this is the only time you will find the checkbox for chromatic aberration, right? And a checkbox for defringe. Now, if I zoom in, okay, you can see there's still a little bit of purple there, still a little bit of purple there, right? But what happens if I turn off one? If I turn off chromatic aberration, notice now just defringe is checked off. It's not so bad. It's not doing much, okay? So sometimes I need to do one. Let's see if it catches up. It seems to do the best job when they're both checked. There we go. Look at that. Almost gone. Oh, it seems to disappear for a second and then come back. Let me give it a minute. I want to do some other edits while I'm in here. Okay, so while we're here, I want to wait for it to catch up. You can also do your camera profiles in Camera Raw, in the Develop Raw here. Okay, so let's just see if any of these are better. Let's go with standard. Okay, so he gives a little more color. Now he needs some exposure. Okay, so what is the histogram telling us? Okay, we need to press the J key here as well. So it's telling us that this part is overexposed. That's the highlight slider. We can solve that, right? And you can see the spike on the histogram that also indicates that it's overexposed or clipping, but we want to brighten him. Okay, so we want to brighten the overall image. And I'm not super worried about the background, to be honest. I might even just let it go white, okay? Because I'm really not concerned about those areas. I want to make sure that he's got some good detail, okay? If you open the curve section of the tool here, this is all in Develop Raw, you'll see the same histogram, and there's a gap over here between the edge of the left, which is black, and the information. So I'm going to just tuck this in until they start to meet. Okay. Check the clippings. Okay. As I go further, the reason to do curves as opposed to just the black slider here, I'll show you what the difference is. Okay. If I go blacks all the way, that's as far as I can go, and I get a little bit of clipping here. Okay. Let me just put it back. But if I go black here, I can go infinitely farther. Okay, so you just have more range with the curves tool than you do with the slider. So usually what I'll do is I'll tuck in to get to the edge of the graph here and then fine tune it a little bit more carefully with the other slider. Okay. So we're adding lots of contrast by doing that. Okay, so I might need to open up the shadows. Okay. You can also use the color section to adjust the white balance. If you know that there's something white, you can use the eyedropper. We can try one of the presets. Okay. Daylight takes out a lot of that yellow that was in this image. Okay. Watch what happens if I use the eyedropper on the green leaf. So it's going to try and take out green, meaning the opposite is going to occur magenta. Okay. So they're opposite on the color wheel. Okay. So it went really bluish pink, okay? If I go over here on, let's try this green. Okay, it's going really, really blue. If I go on the monkey, it should go the opposite way, also blue. Okay, so it's always doing the opposite of what the color that you click on. Okay, so if you click on something that's blue, it's going to make the image yellow and vice versa. Okay, so they are a little bit yellow, but I don't want to make them lacking of color, right? And in fact, I'm going to do a little bit of smart contrast. Okay, so we've already got the before and after, brightening it up. Now I'm going to come back to this issue down here with the defringe and the chromatic aberration because I'm still seeing it. So let me just see if I will get it to catch up here. So if I uncheck one, right, uncheck the other, doesn't seem to do anything. Let's just try one. Oh, that's better. That's better. And that's better over here. Okay. So I just tried one. Let me try chromatic aberration now, see if it'll catch up. There we go. Okay, see how that disappeared? Oh, now it came back again. That's very weird. It disappears for a minute, the red, and then it came right back again. So it's best with just defringe. So when you're trying to remove these things, try one or both, right, to see which one does the best job or a combination of both, right? Now, in terms of our little monkey here, he's not quite as sharp as he could be. And I'm not a great fan of the super sharp AI extension. I find that don't use the face enhancer. It doesn't do a great job. And I'm hoping that this is something that they will update in the near future. But try the universal. And I find that the results with this tool are a bit hit and miss. So I tend not to use it. I'm going to show you what comes out if we use it. And then my other sort of hack that I use and I actually prefer. So we can use the sharpness slider in the Develop Raw, which I didn't do in this case, but we can go back and do that. Or we can use another trick, which is the details tool. Okay, while I'm waiting for it to do that, I'm actually just going to go back over here because I wanted to see our little chipmunk, and you wanted to see about noise. Okay, so let's just look at him. Right? Does he have any noise? Okay, so we're zoomed into 100%. I will come back to your question in a second, Holly. And Earl, I see your question as well. I will come back to that. So I don't see a lot of noise here, right? If I'm looking at the before and after, I don't know why he's popping over there, right? You can see that he's brightened. It's shot at ISO 320, so that's not adding a factor. But see, because of all the fur and the texture, you can't tell if there's any noise, right? So the things that you're sharpening in this case, which has texture, animals, is not going to be an issue. Okay, let me come back to any questions. Let's see. Okay, Trish. How do you add a camera to the camera profile in Luminar? I use the XT2. Unfortunately, the Fuji cameras profiles are different and they do not get added. The Luminar doesn't automatically read them. They're a different kind of profile. I've downloaded a few for my Fuji files, and I'll see if I can find one. But I tend to just use the Luminar default on those. So yeah, Fuji files are different. They perform a different way, unfortunately for us. Did I tell you to check the two boxes even if you don't see any fringe? If you don't see any fringe, no, you don't have to. If you're doing like a preset or something, you can check them off as preemptive if you're saving that as part of your preset, right? I would just do the chromatic aberration one. How to avoid the situation? Okay, so that's a great question, Earl, because you can't really. It's caused by the lens not focusing the three colors all together in the same spot, which has to do with lesser quality lens optics. So the only way that you could avoid that is just buy a more expensive lens. But really, I mean, it's a couple of check boxes and it's not that big a deal. And for the most part, you can get rid of most of it that way. Okay, so great question, Earl. I got Trisha's question as well, right? Okay, so let's see what sharpen or super sharp did. Okay, so in this case, it actually did a pretty decent job. And here we can see a little bit of noise. Okay, so it has sharpened pretty well. I'm going to actually try middle and see if it does any better. Like I said, the super sharp extension for me is a little bit hit and miss. And for things like this, it can work well. For street photos, I've had it work well. On people and faces, like human faces, it does not work well at all. Hair either. So the best thing you could do is try it. And if it works on a particular image, great. If not, I'll show you another way that I add detail. Any other questions while I'm waiting for that to complete its little processing journey? I'll go back here and remind everybody our topic for next week, because I don't have any images for that one yet, except one. And our topic for next week is forests. So I need to get some forest images. Rob, if you could please put the link in the chat for submitting your forest images. So that could be close-ups of moss, macro, pathways, whatever you find in a forest. If you've got an urban forest, something, a park system in your city, great. You can use that, right? Let's go back to Luminar. No, still not. Still doing its thing. This one takes a fairly long time to analyze and do its work. If you've ever used the Topaz plugins, Sharpen AI and Denoise AI, they take a long time as well. So don't be too impatient with Luminar doing this one. Holly's got some forest images. Awesome. Yeah, I literally don't have any. So I need some trees. Can't see the trees for the forest. And who was it that was going? Deb, I thought you were going to the forest as well. So you've got, in-camera movement. That would be cool to know. Yes, please send me some of those. Those are really cool. Oops. So for those that don't know, ICM means in-camera movement. So that's where you use a slightly slower exposure and blur the subject by moving the camera during the exposure, right? Awesome. And Trish has got some for us as well. I think we have an article on camera movement or intentional movement. See if you could find that one. Robin may talk about that. Now I regret pressing this button. He's like, I can't get out of it. I could cancel, but then I lose what else I was working on. We'll just keep going. One thing I have noticed, for those of you that do use Lightroom, maybe this is a poll that you can do on the channel, Rob, is have you noticed that your Lightroom has slowed down recently? For me, like just editing, I was doing some grad photos yesterday and just trying to do the basic edits. My Lightroom was taking forever. So I don't know what's occurred, but Lightroom has just slowed to a crawl. Let's see. I want to do another Lightroom one after this. And Kelly's here, right? You've got the cow. We've got Trish's. We've got Trish's horses and camels. We got elephants. We got a good selection of animals here. A moose. Let's see. This is an interesting one, actually. Kelly's here, right? Let me just check. So you're seeing the same thing, Janelle. Your Lightroom is slower also. I thought I saw Kelly. Yes, Kelly's here. Okay. Okay. So this one here of Kelly's I want to do because it's got a different problem, right? Okay, finally. Okay, so now we can see what's happened with the sharpen that is not so good, right? Look at what's happening. It's doing really weird things. So it's actually done a decent job on his face, but not on the rest. So if I want to just use it on his face, I could just mask it and just brush it into his face. So I could just do that, actually. So I'm happy with what it's done here, but not what it's done outside of this area. Okay, so now we can see that it's just affecting his little face. And I don't even like what it's done. I don't even like what's done up here. Like his eyebrows don't look right. Okay, the rest looks okay. So I'm going with that. So the trick that I use, and I used this before the super sharp extension was even available, is the details panel. So what I do is I'll bring the small details slider up. And this one, Kelly, is where, or I think it was Kelly or Marguerite asked about getting noise. This one is where you will get some noise, because if I zoom into 200% here, okay, you'll see that when I bring the small detail slider up, it actually enhances or sharpens the noise. Okay, so you do have to really watch this one. But I find that if you bring small and medium details up, we'll handle the noise a different way, right? It does make the image look sharper. Can you see that? And if I just want it on him again, okay, because the other guy's not really in focus anyways, okay, so I'm just going to paint it into this guy, okay. I want to give him a little bit of sharpness. This guy's sticking his tongue out, okay. And then I can just come back and dial this back a little bit. I can also use the sharpening. And remember, masking hides it from large areas. So I'm going to zoom in again and have a look. Oops. You'll see what the detail is doing. It's definitely adding noise, but it's making him look sharper, and you can see the fur better as well. Okay, let's see if the fur is better that way. Okay, a little bit of medium details also. Then I'm going to go and work with the noise. Okay, so now I have the same choices. I can go back to Noiseless AI. This one I find does actually a pretty good job. So you literally just choose the one, and it's recommending low in this case. Right? So Mickey says that you have 3 shots. So tree, got it. You have 3 shots. Great. The one I was talking about, it should just say adding motion or something like that. Here, let me see if I can find it on our website. I'm not sure what the title is, but it's intentional movement or something like that, or adding movement. Intentional blur, I think it's called. So look for something like that. Let's see. Is it better to use noiseless or super sharp before doing the rest of the editing, or is it irrelevant doing while editing? Because there's noiseless AI raw, and which I actually should have gone back to do. So let me show you that, Earl. Okay. You should do the noiseless raw first. So I'm actually going to undo this one because I made my own mistake here. Okay. So see noiseless AI here, and then there's noiseless raw. Okay. So I want to undo this one. You should apply the noiseless first. Okay. So I'm going to go all the way back to before any edits were done, and this is now applying on the original image, right? And then do your other edits on top. But if you notice what I just did, because I did them out of order, you can always go back to the edit panel and go find the noiseless at the bottom. Yes, that's the one, Rob. Okay, so let's see what this did. Okay, it's definitely getting rid of a lot of the noise. Can you see there's lots of color noise? Right, so I can even bring the sliders up a little more. It's got the color noise. I want to have a little more detail. Okay, so I'm going to apply it and apply develop raw and apply super sharp and apply details. So let's just wait for it to catch up and see if that does anything. But we can also apply it again afterwards. Okay, so you can apply the noiseless raw, and then you can apply it again afterwards if you still have too much noise. Okay. Hyman, welcome. Thanks for coming. I know you're active in our Facebook group, so glad you're able to join us today. Intentional camera movement. Yes, that is correct. ICM. Okay. All right. Let's see if this is caught up yet. Let me zoom into 100%. Yeah, it's still not catching up. I still think I need to get these here. My poor computer is trying to run live streaming software and 2 editing softwares at the same time. So I'm going to come back to that one. Okay. So does that answer your question, Earl, about you definitely want to do the noiseless raw first as well as develop raw, and then you can always add more noise reduction afterwards, because sharpening and noise reduction are this dance, right? And yes, we're working on merchandise, the photo editing dance. So the photo editing dance is you apply one thing like sharpening, for example, then you may have to go back and do some noise reduction. Or if you do noise reduction, then you may have to add some sharpening, because they're opposite. Okay. They're counterbalancing each other. Okay. Kelly's cow. He's outstanding in his field. Sorry, I couldn't help it. That's very punny, right? The first thing I noticed about the cow is that he's kind of purple. So I want to do something with his color, because I think he should probably be a little more brown than he is. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start with landscape, because I know that the grass should be greenish. And the second thing I'm going to choose is the white balance. Now we're working on a raw file from Canon. Okay. And I'm just going to choose daylight and see what we get. And immediately we get brown cow and green grass. So that's already better. And cloudy makes it even more. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and choose auto and see what the program thinks. Somewhere in between. So that's actually not too bad. I might dial back a little bit less magenta as well. Okay, so I don't want purple cow. Right, we want how now brown cow. Could be a bull. Yeah. I think, no, here we go again. You guys, look. We had a big discussion last week about cows and steers and bulls. So I'm just going to say bovine. This bovine animal, how's that? We're going to call them they. This is a gender neutral bovine. Gender neutral bovine. Ending the discussion. Okay. Next thing I want to do is correct the tilt of the horizon. And I don't know that there's anything there in the sky to pick up, right? See, if I pull down the highlights, let's see. Yeah, there's a tiny little bit there, maybe, right? But I want to make sure it's straight first. Okay, so I'm going to try auto and see if it straightens it based on the hill. If it didn't, you can use this ruler here. So you can click on the ruler and then just draw it across the hill. And of course, I'm assuming that this is the horizon and it's actually straight, which it might not be. Okay. The other option is I can literally just crop in and get rid of the sky, which I might do. Now, here's a question for you. Okay. Tell me in the chat. Should I leave more space to the left or the right of this bovine? Because remember how I say we want space in front of the animal or person. So if we want space in front, then we want to go this way, right? With space on the left. However, he or she, they are looking the other way. So do we go this way? Interesting dilemma. So how to crop this? More space on the right or more space on the left? What do you guys think? I'm thinking on the right because the cow is looking that way, the bovine. Right? It is a good question. Okay, so Holly says they're looking to the right. The ruminant. Now we're calling it the ruminant. Okay, so the consensus is to the right, and I tend to agree. Okay, so again, this was a tricky one, right? So you really have to think about it. And then if I'm cropping in, I mean, I don't really need to worry about, the tilt. I can just do it however I want because I'm cropping in anyways. So let's just get to the heart of the matter. So that bright sky is going to take your attention away from the bovine, okay? Now that we've got them cropped, I'm going to do the shift, double click on the blacks and the whites, and you see that spread out the histogram. We've now got some black clipping. I might even go a little farther. And we've got a tiny bit of white clipping, which is like the top of the horn. So I'm going to bring it back until it's not clipping. Okay. Again, I'm going to do the same thing with texture on the animal, okay? Because I don't want to texture the whole picture. I just want to texture the animal, okay? So now that we've kind of got our cropping, I'm going to use a vignette, okay? And let's brighten a little bit. Actually, I'm not going to brighten. I'm going to darken. Before I do any masking, I'm going to go into the HSL panel because I want to shift this grass a little bit. I'm still not crazy about the color of this grass. So using the targeted tool, right, whatever you click on, it's going to adjust. I'm clicking and holding so I can darken the grass. Now look at that, okay? Darkens the green. I often like to leave yellow brighter, and orange, you'll see, will brighten the cow as well, and the grass that the cow is standing on. So that's actually kind of a nice thing to brighten this orange, right? Yellow brightens overall or darkens overall. Often what I'll do is I'll leave yellow brighter and darken the green, and then it will create a little bit more contrast in the grass. Okay, so can you see what that's doing? That's all from those sliders. Okay, shifting the background. If I want less saturation, I can just bring the green and the yellow down a little bit, or reset it, just double click the word. I can shift the hue. So same thing, click on this targeted tool. Let's see, do we want more orange grass or do we want more green grass? In this case, I actually don't mind the grass being a little more sort of almost like bluegrass. It looks a little bit more natural. Okay? So see the before and after. That's with that tool. Okay. Let's go even darker with the green. See that? Look at the contrast I can create. You have to be careful when you're doing sliders like this bit that you don't make a mess. Okay, so it's kind of making a mess in here if I go too far. So be sparing on extreme edits. Be very careful, okay? Especially if you're doing something in the sky, because you can make banding easily. Banding is when the sky doesn't go smoothly, okay? Okay, so I've got that. I've got the vignette. Now we're going to go do some masking. Okay, so I'm going to use that preset again. Okay, so preset for, where are we? Mask, subject, and background. Okay, so Kelly said you like this one, right? So mask, subject, and background. And all it does is give me the masks. Now I can do whatever I want with them. Okay, so I'm going to do the subject first. That's the cow. And I'm going to see how well it chose him. Them. Now you see the problem with the green mask on a subject or on a picture that has a lot of green. So I'm going to change the mask to red. I usually use one of those two colors, green or red, depending on which one shows up the best. Now, if we look in here, you can see that there's parts in here that it's chosen the grass. So I'm going to do a subtract, and I'm going to use the brush in this case, set to auto mask, right? I'm going to go full density, and I don't need to feather. Okay, so feather is how soft your brush is. Okay, I'm just going to go around inside here because I want to undo the masking on the background. Well, maybe I need a slightly bigger brush. There we go. Okay, see that? So I want to not select this part, because when I do the added texture, I don't want to add the texture to the background. Okay. Then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to fix the other one, because we've got another mask, right? Let's see. I'm just going to check the other parts. Looks like it's okay. It's got a little bit of the grass in here and a little bit here as well. Okay, so it wasn't able to determine the difference between the edge of the bovine animal and the grass because they both had sort of similar colors and textures. So I'm just going in here to tell it. I could zoom in even further, but I'm not going to get too picky. Okay, so now I've got a good selection. Okay, so I'm going to delete this other background mask. And instead, I'm going to duplicate and invert. Okay, so then it's going to make me a new one, the opposite, and it now has the background. Aha! We missed part. I'm going to undo that because clearly I missed. It doesn't have this whole part of the cow. So I'm going to add brush again. So I did subtract brush and add brush. And I want to make sure I've got this part of the cow. For some reason, it didn't pick up the black spot. Okay, so I'm going to do this whole thing now. Duplicate and invert. Yeah, see, it's still missing little bits, but I can go in and clean that up a little bit. It's pretty close. Okay, so now we've got the subject. We can give them some texture. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Be careful with clarity, because when you add clarity, you actually add edge contrast and you get more of the darker areas going darker. So I usually don't go too far with clarity, maybe 10 or 12. And for fur, go with texture instead. It's a much better slider. Okay. I'm going to increase the shadows a bit just to bring a little more texture out in the dark areas of this bovine animal. Right. And let's see, do we want to do anything else? Yeah, we've got texture. We could do sharpness. If we need any noise reduction, if we're worried about that, we can put a little bit of noise reduction in here. But I think the bovine creature looks good. Okay. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. There we go. See the texture? Look at the difference. Okay, now I'm going to show you another trick to blur the background. Okay, so we've got the background selected, including the part where the cow I keep saying cow. I'm just going to call it a cow, right? Is standing. So that part of the ground is sharp. So we don't want to blur that part, right? So I'm going to do the blur first. So I'm just going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to go sharpness minus, texture minus, clarity a little bit minus, but I don't go too far. And then I'm actually going to add black. And we're going to darken the background too. Remember, we want to darken it a little bit more. Okay, so look at now how dramatic it is, and the cow stands out. But the problem is where the cow is standing is blurry, and we don't want that because that should be sharp. Okay, so that's an easy fix. Okay, so when you have a subject, when you see their feet, don't blur that part. You want the blur to start behind them. Okay, so I'm going to do another subtract on this mask. Linear gradient. Now this is when I drag in from the outside edge. I'm going to start about here and then let it fade off as your depth of field would naturally fade off, right? So it's going to be sharp in the foreground where the animal is standing, and then it's going to fade off. See that? As I drag it up, more of the field becomes in sharp focus. Let me go even more dramatic with the adjustments, and you'll see what I mean. Okay. You see how it's fading off, right? So if I go all the way down to the bottom, and then it just fades off. Okay, so I want it to start going out of focus about there. Okay. Like so. Now I brought the darkness down because I want to add some contrast. And remember, when you add black, it increases saturation. So I'm going to bring the saturation down a little bit. Okay. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now look at the mask. Can you see that? That's where the mask is. Okay. That's your overall mask on that object. Okay. So there's a little trick to blur the background. All right. So here's our bovine before. He or she's a little purple. And after. Right. Now, let's take it to the next thing here. Okay. I just keep calling him a cow. What am I missing here? Am I missing any questions? You guys got lots of chat going on, but I don't know if I missed any questions. So, Marguerite, this is exactly what I'm going to do next. Okay, so watch what happens. If you are using Lightroom, which we are, okay, we're going to take this into Photoshop. Okay, but before I do that, who am I missing, Rob? Send me a private message, please. Yeah, it's definitely purple. And that's just my trained eye, Kelly. I've seen, I've been looking at color and doing color correcting because I used to print color photos from negatives. So that's why I see the purple immediately, right? So my eye is trained for that, right? But we could do, we could do something with the eyedropper, right? If you know that the cow maybe is beige, right, or white, right? See now how blue, right? That's how blue. The original cow, purple. So I much prefer the cow less purple. Like so. Possibly even more warm. Yeah. Like that. And be careful, remember, with your saturation. Okay, so this is what I want to do with this guy. But before I open another photo editing program, I just want to check on our monkey here. Right, all right. So now that all the tools have caught up, right, so you can see what's happening there. So we've used the noiseless raw and the develop raw, as well as super sharp and details to sharpen up the monkeys. Right. Now I'm just going to cancel out of this one because it's going to take forever to save back into Lightroom. So when I go into Photoshop, okay, so remember I want to open this in Photoshop beta, okay? So I've got both versions available to open. Now, if I do open as Smart Object in Photoshop, it's going to open in Photoshop regular, Okay, because what I did was, if you're opening it in the wrong Photoshop, or if it automatically opens into beta for you, right, you just need to change it up here. Because when you did your install, if you've got the beta version, right, I can just change this temporarily, right? So if I say open in Photoshop, now it's going to open in beta. Okay, so if I say open a smart object, it's going to open in Photoshop beta. I hope. Fingers crossed, right? But the question that Marguerite had was, I want more space in front of, yes, so we got the beta. The cow, I also want more space below where the feet are, okay? Because the feet are very close to the bottom, right? We're looking for trees, Neil, so you don't necessarily have to have in-camera movement. You just need trees. Okay, so if you haven't tried the new beta yet, oh, a new version is available. I am not going to update that right now. Never update your software when you're in the middle of something like doing a live stream, right? So now I'm in here and I've got my layers. Okay, so we're in Photoshop beta, and this little thing here, okay, so we could do select subject. However, what I want to do is actually expand the canvas. So to do that, I'll show you how. You just have to choose the crop tool. So I just did C on the keyboard, and I'm going to expand it down. Okay. I'm also going to expand it this way. So we want a little more space this way. I want some more space above as well, but I want to do these parts first. Okay, so I'm going to go like this. And now that I've got the canvas expanded, okay, actually I could do it up here as well. I don't have to do them all at once. The canvas expanded, we're going to end up with something like that. Okay, so that's kind of the composition that I'm looking for. So we could try all at once. So what you want to do is use the marquee tool, select the image, but inside a little bit. Okay, so you've got a little bit of the grass stuff. Then invert it. So inverting the selection. Now in this new generative fill toolbar, if you don't type anything, it's even telling you, if you leave this blank, we'll make a selection for you based on the surroundings. So I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, and now it's doing a generative fill, and it's going to give me 3 choices of which things I want to use to fill in the outside. Now, I'll show you why I wouldn't necessarily do the entire outside all at once. Okay, so look at that, right? It's pretty good. And where you find your choices is in the properties panel. Okay, so if I want to see the different ones, there's a different choice. Oh, that one looks good. It's kind of darkened the hill back there. No, too busy. Too much grass in the foreground. I like this one here. It's simplified the foreground. I think number 2 is our winner, right? And it's done a nice job filling all of that in, okay? So let me just move the properties panel back over here. So look at the difference. See? Super easy. And I didn't have to do any of it. All I did was make the canvas bigger, right? Let's go crazy. Okay, let's make the canvas even bigger. Let's say let's go like this. We want more space. What's happening? No, I didn't use content aware to expand the canvas. I'm using the crop tool to just draw it bigger. And then I'm using the new generative AI. And generative AI is different than content aware fill. It's content aware fill on steroids. It's like it draws stuff for you. Okay, content aware fill only can draw from what's in the actual image, whereas generative AI makes stuff up based on stock images that Adobe has in its repertoire. Right. It's not in a recent update to now. If you have Photoshop 2023, that's not the version you need to do this, right? So here's my apps in the Creative Cloud app. You'll notice that I have 2 versions of Photoshop, right? This is the one, where are we? Photoshop beta should be listed on here. So there's Photoshop here, and then beta. Oh, that's Adobe as well. Beta apps. Here we go. Okay, so it's listed under beta apps. Okay, if you don't have this one, okay, and it says update available, this is the one you need, Photoshop beta. Okay, and it's got this different icon. Okay, your regular Photoshop is this one. Okay, so it's not in a regular Photoshop update. It's a separate install. Okay, and it runs separately side by side. Okay, that's why I had to set my Lightroom to tell it which version of Photoshop to open. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I am going to choose. Okay, so this is tricky because I don't want the top part. Okay, you know what? I'm going to undo that. So I'm going to go with the crop tool again, and I want a little more space. Okay, and then I'm going to use the marquee tool to select the. So you kind of have to think it through. There's like some logic steps. Okay, select the inverse, and this is the tool that I'm using. It's a generative fill, so it's not content aware fill. Oh, you guys can't see it. Okay, can you see this now? There, I moved it out of the way. Okay, so this is the toolbar I'm using. It's a generative fill. It's not content aware fill. It's different. It's a different toolbar. Okay, so if I just hit enter on this one, it's going to fill it and then give me 3 choices again. Okay. Get my properties. You'll see the 3 choices under the properties panel. And let's have a look. Okay, so now we've got some really dark edges happening over here. So it's vignetted, maybe a little too much. It's also blurred, maybe a little too much. This one's not too bad. I don't mind this one. Okay, so I'm going to go with this one. It's kind of darkened the edges a little bit too much, so I'm not crazy about how dark it's gotten. If you don't like any of them, you can just hit generate again, and it will give you another 3 to choose from. Right? Did you share the video link to the Photoshop AI video that I did, Rob? Yeah, there is a thing about betas, and they can have a problem for sure. I haven't had any problems, but then again, my Lightroom slowed down. So is it related? I don't know. But they're running separately, right? So it's not affecting my regular Photoshop at all. It's a separate install. Yeah. Okay, so now here's the next 3 options. That one's got some nice grass in the middle in here. Okay, so it's kind of blurring the edges a little bit too much, but let's just go with this one for now, just in the sake of speed. You can also delete these versions. Okay, so if you're not happy, you can also rate them. Okay, so if you get one that's not very good, you can tell Adobe. That's the whole point of the beta, is to tell them, yeah, this one's pretty good. No, this one is not. Okay, so if you get one that's bad, let's have a look, see if there's one that's bad. That one's actually pretty good. Okay, so I would probably rate this one as good. Okay, and it's telling us, said thanks for rating. And do we like this one? I think this is the one I used. And we're gonna added more grass in the foreground. All right, let's go with this one. Okay, so I chose that one as the review, and then if you can delete these, because it's the reason it's taking so long is because the AI is in the cloud and it's drawing from images in the cloud to draw these things for you. Okay, so I'm going to one more time. You always have to add to the top layer as well. Okay, so if you go down a layer, you kind of mess yourself up. Now I'm going to add some sky. Okay. This time, when I select the box, though, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to use my marquee tool, and I'm going to say, what I wanted to fill it with. So I'm going to say top of hill, or hilltop actually, hilltop and sky. And then let's just see what it fills in. Right? I might be asking too much of it by asking for top of a hill and sky, right? But we'll see what it comes up with. Right? So it's drawing from the cloud back and forth. That's why it takes so long. Look at that. Okay, so that's not too bad. We've got a rolling hill. We've got an out of focus sky, which goes with the blurriness that we added previously. And it's actually, now we even got a park bench. So if you want to sit and watch the cow, the first one is actually pretty darn good. Let's just do another one. I might be pushing it a little bit here, but let's just see. Am I missing any questions? If I hadn't put a vignette on the original cow image, then yeah, I might not have had that. I think it's because I vignetted it. So it continued on by continuing to add to the darkness. Yeah, good question. That one's not bad. Not as blurry as the other ones, though. Yeah, I still think this one with the tree on the side is the best so far. So I'm actually just going to do undo and get rid of those three. And I'm going to put sunset, sky, hilltop, and sky, sunset. And let's see what that does if we get something different. Okay. I'd like it to match a little bit nicer with the cow. And now I think he needs more space on the left too. Now I'm calling it a he. I do prefer raw files if you have them, Neil, because then you, as you've seen me working on some of the other raw files, it just gives more options. All right, now we got a hill and a sunset. We even got some kind of farm machinery in the background over here, a silo. Little bit intense. I could do little bit intense. Let's do sky, and let's do pastel sunset. Okay, we don't want it so bright. A little bit orange. So Rob's giving you some YouTube, Google chat avatar things. It was in the evening, but rainy. Add more cows. Yeah, we could sure add more cows. Okay, so now we got weird colors, which is going a little bit psychedelic. So I'm not crazy about that. I still like this one the best. Okay, but now if we want to add some more cows, all right, all we got to do is make another selection. Cows. Let's get specific. Brown and brown. Yeah, let's just say brown cows. Okay. Oh no, brown cow. Yeah, he's a little bit crowded on the left. He, she, it, they. And the tree almost needs to be on the other side to balance the cow. But let's see what we get. Yeah, see, not so great. Generating animals, it's not doing the best job. Oh, we got butts now. Yeah, so not so much. Let's just see what happens if we say just cows. Oh, let's do a herd of cows. Or cattle, maybe? Let's try a herd of cattle. So cattle is different than cows. We talked about this. Yes, brown cows make chocolate milk. I definitely need more space on the left. And we're going way off topic here, but the thing with this AI stuff, and I talked about this in the video that I did, is, it can be kind of fun and we're just playing around, right? Honestly, why do we have the butts? What I would have done is probably just expanded the canvas a little bit, and that's it. Yeah, I'm not such a fan of the cows, so we're just going to undo until I get rid of the cows. Okay, so what I am going to do is go back to the crop tool, and let's just give a little more space there. How's that? Is that better? Like so. Let's try that. And once again, now this time I don't have to select the whole picture, right? All I need to do, because I'm just doing a strip, is just start here. I just need to select, you need a little bit of the picture, okay? And I'm just going to generate again. So I'll just finish this edge up. It is easy to get carried away and play around and spend hours just playing. But I do encourage you, if you have Photoshop, to give it a go. There's also AI programs. I'm not a fan of the fully generated AI images, but for things like this, like I remember there was one, I don't know if you guys remember watching where there was somebody that had a buffalo and we were missing like his tail and the backside of the buffalo, right? If we could add in, his back of his foot or give him space behind him, right? Like all we've really done here is give him a bit more space. And honestly, like in reality, I would have probably, I probably would have stopped there, right? So I would have just given the cow a bit more space. And for me, I don't have a problem with that, right? But we just kept adding and adding and adding just to see what we can do, right? And now you save it and you end up with this layered file and all of this stuff is still here and all the variations are still here. So you could go back at any time and choose a different variation and continue on, okay? Or start over. So yes, let's save our cow and move on. So there's the original, and in a moment we will have the Photoshop version coming in. Okay. And I could have worked with the original cropping also, and then just use generate to fill in the sky too, right? So we kind of did this as an experiment just to see what we could do, right? Let's see. Okay, let's see if we have time to do one more Luminar. Is Brandon back? Brandon, are you back? The snake, unfortunately, well, I've already done worked on one of Earl's, and the snake, unfortunately, is a JPEG, and it looks like it's been edited already. So I'm not really able to do much with this one. So if you have the original one of this one, Earl, do resubmit it as a raw file, because for me to do any editing on this one, there's very little data here for me to work with. It's all really, really sort of compressed, right? So send me the original. Now, where's our cow? Is he not saving? He should be saving back in here. Interesting. You know what? I'm going to save him because I don't know if he's saving, for example. I'm going to do a save as. Normally, it's currently being saved. Okay, so it is being saved, which probably means it's a big file. Okay. Let's do one more in Luminar. Sheila, are you still here? Oh, Brandon's back. Okay. So I haven't done one of Brandon's for a while, so I'd like to do one of Brandon's. Would you guys like to see the dog? Or we already did one chipmunk. How about the dog? Because we've got snow, which is another different problem. You guys want to see the dog with the snow or the squirrel? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? Dog or squirrel? Dog or squirrel? Going once. And I know there's a delay between the time that I say something and the time that you guys hear it. So I'm getting some woofs. Okay. Dog it is. Let's see. Our cow still hasn't come in yet. I'm slightly afraid of how big this file is going to be because he's still saving in Photoshop. So that's the problem with using this, is that it may end up not saving it as a PSD because the file may be too big. And if it comes back and it tells me that there's an error, I'll have to save it as a different kind of document. Oh, here it is. It's still saving, and it's 408 megs. Okay, so that's the cow with all the layers. So still saving. Dog. Okay, so we want dog in Luminar. I'm going to just open Luminar directly. So I'm not taking it to Luminar. We're going to go directly to dog. 400 megs. Yeah, not even, that's not even that big, Rob. There was one that I did that was part of the test that I did, and it was 2 gigs. So yeah, 400 megs, that's not big at all. 2 gigs. Animals. Oh, that's my new jacket. Did you guys see my new jacket? I don't even know where that was from. I have no idea where that just was. I think it's in my downloads. Okay, dog. Here we go. Okay, so usual, we're going to start with develop raw. And we're going to check the camera profiles of this one. If I take a look back in Lightroom, this is an ARW. So that is that a Sony? Yeah, Sony file. Okay, so these are Sony camera profiles. Okay, so you'll see that unfortunately, Trish, ours are not showing up for Fuji. I did add these ones. I downloaded them, but they're not great. Okay, so let's take a look at these ones here. And now you have the opportunity or the ability that when you hover over, it shows you the preview. I kind of like this neutral one. It's brightening up the background. Let's see. Camera standard. Camera standard is darkening the water. You know, there isn't, that's vivid. Vivid 2, neutral, black and white. Portrait, I think. Not sure what FL stands for. But I kind of like standard because it's darkening the water and we want to bring the dog out more. So I kind of like standard. We'll start with that. And before I do any major edits, I'm gonna do some develop raw, but I'm also gonna crop it. And I'm gonna come back to this develop raw. So I want to crop it because we want space in front of the dog, right? But this stuff at the top here, okay? So what I want to do before I crop it is to do my upside down trick. So let's look at it upside down, okay? So to determine where our eye goes and what I need to work on. Where does your eye go in this picture? Okay, where do we want it to go? We want it to go to the dog, right? So does your eye go anywhere else besides the dog? Okay. No, you can't save. Once you've done something in Photoshop, you can't save it as a DNG because that's a raw file. Photoshop, you can save it as a TIFF or a PSD, which is a Photoshop document, or there's also a large format document, which I forget the extension on, which is over a gig. So no, you can't save it as a DNG because it won't save the layers, right? Okay, take care, Hyman. Yeah, we've had some severe weather in some of the locations people have dialed in from today. So take care. Okay, so where does your eye go? Your eye goes to the dog. But there's a few areas here that are grabbing my attention. One being this strip of snow behind the dog, okay? And the second one being this bright area, this house back here, okay? Margaret says you see the dog and then the snow. No, the HEIC is an Apple format. I forget what it is now, but I'd have to look in Photoshop. Let's go in here. I forget what format, but yeah, it's closed now. I forget which format, but the ones that I did for the other thing, I would have to search for it. I forget the name of it, but it's a large file. David, I know David's been playing with it as well. Okay. So there's the cow, and let's just see how big the file is. It's actually 1 gig. Okay, so there you go. It's 1 gig. And that was the more layers you do, and the more variations of each thing you do. Plus, I upsized it. Right, so it's now 7,000 pixels wide. Right, the bigger your file is going to get. But it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. Okay, back to our dog. So now that I know where my eye is going, I know where I want to crop and which things I want to work on. Okay, so I want to crop some of the top off because I don't want these houses. So let's just see what Luminar thinks is a good crop. So it's going to do crop AI or composition AI. And I find that it does a good amount of cropping, but you have to move it around. Right? So simply, I'm just going to move the dog down. And like the dog is really falling on this lower third here, which is perfect. Beautiful composition. Okay. When you have your subject falling on this third in particular, okay, it's called the power third, and the dog's got nice space in front of him. Your leading lines lead you to the dog. This is a great composition. Okay. Right there. So we've simplified already the things, the house at the top. Okay. Now let's work on back to develop raw. Let's check the color. Okay. So we're going to go to the color. This time we can use the eyedropper, okay, because there are a few things that might be neutral, the dog being one of them. So if I click on the dog's fur, it's going to try and neutralize or take any tint out of the dog's fur, right, based on the black. Let's try the snow. Okay, the snow looks actually better. So if I go back to as shot, it looks a little pink again, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm going to click on the snow. Watch the sliders. It definitely made it less pink. I like this tone a little better, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to do a little bit of sharpness here, and we're going to do more sharpness in the tools, the details tool on the dog, right? And other than that, I don't see a lot that I want to do here. Let's check our histogram. Do we have anything clipping? We got a little bit of fur clipping. I can bring the whites up a little bit. Okay, just until I have a tiny bit clipping, and then bring it back again. Okay, so remember the highlights here are indicated with red highlight warning or highlight clipping, and blue is indicating shadow clipping. Okay, so I can brighten the shadows a little bit. And then bring the blacks down. We still have detail on the dog. Exposure's bang on. Don't need to do anything there. Okay. Like so. Okay. Now I want to add a vignette. And the advantage of the Luminar's vignette over Lightroom's is that it allows you to choose the subject. So if I just click on the dog, right now my vignette is being made right around the dog where I clicked. So I clicked choose subject and then choose the dog before I adjusted the sliders. Let me show you that again. Right. So before I do anything, I clicked on choose subject. I've got the little crosshairs and I just clicked on the middle of the dog. Okay. Now, when I adjust the sliders, you could see that the center is here where I clicked on the dog. Okay. If I want to move it, I'm still got the X active. When you're happy with it, just choose subject again or click it to basically put the clicker back. Right, now I change my feather and soften the amount. Something like that. Okay, so there's the before and after with the vignette. Okay. Now we want to add some texture to the dog and to the snow in the foreground. Okay, so I'm going to use structure for that one. And I want to take it up really high just so that you can see what it's doing. Oh, I still got my clipping warnings on. Okay, so look what it's doing here. That's obviously too much, but I want to mask it. Okay, so I'm going to see what I can do for AI masking. There isn't an animal one yet, remember? Okay, so let's see what it comes up with. It may find man-made ground. Let's hope. And this will be the last image for today. So just a reminder, we want forest images for next week. Okay, so let's just see. We don't want the water. I want man-made ground, what it thinks is man-made ground. Did it pick any? Aha, the snow. Let's see. We want natural ground. So it thinks it's concrete. And all I'm doing is trying to get close. No, I don't want that bit up there. So I'm just going to go with the snow that it's chosen here. And I'm going to go and mask it a bit more. So I'm going to use the brush to paint in the dog and get the rest of the snow. So I'm just going to get the dog like so. And erase this bit over here that it got. Okay, that looks good. I could also decide to erase if I don't want the foreground quite as sharp. Okay, so now I got the edge not quite as sharp. Okay, so you can see what it's doing if I turn it off and on. And then let's just scale this back a little bit to something a bit more realistic. Okay. See what it's doing? It's picking up the fur and the texture in the snow. Okay. While I'm here, I'm going to copy this mask. Okay. I didn't sharpen this bush. I didn't add the structure there because I didn't want to bring any more attention to the bush, but I wanted that texture in the snow. Okay. Now we can do the same thing with the details. Okay, so let's just bring some of these sliders up and see what they do. Okay, so medium details. It's doing a little bit. Small details is what's going to bring out that fur again. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. See how that's bringing out details in the fur. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what's affecting the fur. A little bit of sharpen. Once again, I'm going to mask, and now I just have to paste. Okay, so it's only going to go on the dog in the snow again. I'm going to go not quite so much. Okay. So let's see a before and after. See how much more detail there is in the snow and the fur. So the key to the detail in the snow is keeping the highlights down from clipping and then adding the texture and structure, the detail and the structure just to the snow and the dog. Okay. Now it's gone a little bit blue in the snow, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Okay. We can also use negative structure on the background, but I think it's actually looking pretty good. Actually, let's try negative structure. We can do negative structure. See how that blurs the background. And we're going to do that same mask, paste it in, but we want to invert it. Okay, so we want everything else to start to blur, not the dog. Right, now I want to make sure that I don't have any of the dog. Don't want to blur any of the dog. Like so. See how that's blurring the background? Maybe not so much. Oh, like that. Okay, so here's our before and after. Right. Now if I want to darken the background and the snow, but not the dog, there's the quick way. Remember, we could use a dodge and burn tool, or we could just duplicate this whole layer. This is the layer. See, there's a new layer. Change it to multiply, and then wait for it to catch up. Okay, now it's darkening. All I have to do is just adjust it a little bit, the opacity, and mask. This is where I really, 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 really want the ability to copy and paste a mask from one layer to the next, because I do this a lot, right? I use a copy or I use a duplicate layer a lot, and now I have to redo it. Okay, so I'm going to go with man-made ground like it did before. It should give me the snow, hopefully. Right. And then I'm just going to invert it. Actually, let me paint the dog in first. Okay, so I want to paint the dog in. And around the dog, like so. Okay, so remember, this is going to darken things. And then I'm going to use a big brush here because I want to darken this edge. So what I'm doing is I'm erasing at 50%. Okay. Get that whole bit. Right. So then I have to invert the whole thing. Okay, still invert. Now it should be darkening everything that's red. Okay. If I increase the opacity, right, you can see what it's doing. You don't want to go so crazy. Okay, and if I want more darkening on the snow, all I got to do is go with the brush and just paint with a lower opacity. So let's just say I want a little more darkening in here, like so. And let's say I want a little more racing around the dog, so it's not, the water's not so dark. Don't want this water so dark. Okay, like so. Now we've minimized that middle, this snow as well. Okay. How's that? Okay, so there's a before and after. Questions? Have a great week, Sheila. Thanks, Holly. Always good to see you. So it's our Canada Day here on Saturday, which is like your Independence Day. We have Canada Day, and then of course next week is your July 4th. So what day does that fall on? It doesn't fall on a Wednesday, does it? Okay, so we're going to be here on the 5th. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter next week because I have a photo session. So we're going to do an hour-long session because I'm actually have to pack up my gear, and I have a special photo session for a female wrestler, which is actually going to be really exciting. We've got some cool ideas. So once I get those photos, maybe I'll do an edit session just to show you those. So have a great Canada Day. If you're in Canada, have a great July 4th. If you're in the US, and we'll see you next week on the 5th for our forest images. Like so. There we go. So next week, we'll see you in the forest. Take care. Have a great weekend.